Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the NBC Network with your host, Hurricane Age. New day, new show, new topic. A very interesting topic, a topic that will guide us towards some sort of inspiration and also will teach us a lot about things that happen in our lives. And sometimes we don't see these things happen, and sometimes it may not happen to us. They may happen to others, but you never know who around us could be inflicted with such story that we're going to talk about today. So I got with me David Alston. He is the host of the Underground Subway podcast, but he has a phenomenal story to talk about, to share. And it's probably going to touch a lot of you guys. And you will probably not relate to it maybe, but it will open your eyes to big things in life. Life is full of surprises. And what we're going to hear today is going to be like, what? And so that's it. So without any further ado, I'll bring David on. David, come on in. How are you, man?
How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to be able to share just a little bit of what I've gone through with your viewers. And I'm sure hopefully someone will be inspired to take everything that life throws at you and just keep going forward.
Well, listen, I'm eager to hear. I've read about the stuff, and it is amazing, you know, what you had to discover in your life and how it all started and where you are today and what you're doing today is definitely changing lives. And so let's talk about the story itself. And again, I mean, we're talking about just David Alston, but that's not your true name that you discovered later on. So let's talk about what happened.
Well, I've always known ever since my entire life, I've always known from my mother that I was adopted. I was adopted at age 7 months. And so I've always known that I was adopted. And she would always tell me that, you know, you were adopted. You're not really my son, but I love you. It was just my mom and I in the house together growing up. And I've always known that. And she's always told me, you know, you got brothers and sisters out there, but I can't find them. I can't locate them. We've always been trying to find my family. And so, you know, all of this happened. I was adopted at 7 months. So you're talking the mid 60s, early 70s. During that time growing up, life was totally different than it is now. Totally different. And one of the problems with being adopted then, as opposed to now, is that being adopted was not a badge of courage. It was a stain on your life. You know, you didn't want, if other kids knew you were adopted, you would often be teased. And it was just something you didn't really want anyone to know about. So I always knew about it, but I didn't really want to share it with anyone. And so one of the struggles, you know, I would have growing up is thinking, you know, this really isn't my mom, but it is my mom. And so I developed that love for her. And just, you know, just a difficult time knowing that I've got family out there somewhere. I remember years ago was a song, I think it was James Ingram. That sung a song about, I think from the movie Aladdin or something like that. And there's a line in the song that says somewhere out there. And I used to hear that and say, somewhere out there, I've got some family. And I just went, you know, just going through life knowing that I had family out there. And so eventually at age about 18 years old, I graduated high school. My little cousin, who was about 5 years old, he's looking through the Philadelphia phone book. And so That's where I was born and raised in Philadelphia, as you can see.
Oh, Eagles.
Go Eagles, fly Eagles, fly, go Birds. And so he's looking through the phone book in Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia phone book is about, it's that thick. It was a big book, and he's just playing with it. And my mom goes over to him, and she says to him, let me put that book down. And he says, well, I'm trying to find somebody. He's 5. He doesn't know what he's doing. So she says, well, give me the book and let me find someone for you. And she opens up the phone book and she opens it up to the name of my biological mom. And she looks at it and she calls and, let me see if this is really her. And my biological mom answers the phone and says, yes, it's me. I was, running from people. I was involved in some things that I didn't want my name published. Now I've changed my life around. I've given God my life, and I told them put my name in the book. And so that's how I met my family. And I remember that first night that I went over to the house to meet my family for the first time. And I walked in. I was expecting this grand, reception, but my mom was there, my brother, my sisters, the nieces and nephews, and they acted like, hey, come on in. You just part of the family. Come on in. And I remember earlier in life when I was actually in the 7th grade, and I've always been very shy. And I remember I was in junior high school, and I walked into the hallway with my friends one day, and I saw this girl, and I said, man, she is cute. She's beautiful. She had the little cleft in her chin. She was pretty. Oh, and my friend said, well, Dave, go talk to her. And I said, no, I'm not going to talk to her. They said, go ahead. I said, no, I'm not going to say anything. She's older because she was in the 8th grade class. And I was shy. I said, no, but man, that girl is probably the prettiest girl I've seen in this school. My friend said, man, all these other girls. I said, no, that one right there, she is beautiful. And they said, well, go talk to her. No. Well, fast forward to when I met my family that night. I come in and I'm introducing myself to everyone, and everyone's introduced themselves to me. And my sister walks over to me and she speaks to me. And she says, my birth name was actually Edward. And so she walked over to me and she says, hey, Eddie, nice to meet you. And I said to her, my name is David. And I said, that's the girl that I
Oh my
saw.
God.
It was my sister. I guess that's what the attraction was. I was drawn to my sister. And so
Amazing.
and anytime interrupt me with any questions or anything, because I'll just talk,
No. Yeah.
I host a podcast, so I love to talk. So.
Yeah. No. Listen, I told you this is gonna be fun stuff.
Right.
So this is all you, right? But there's a few things that I want to just highlight. First of all,
sure.
that is amazing. I mean, the idea that you were able to find your family and your biological mom and your sister, your brothers. And it's amazing the story that you saw this girl, you kind of was attracted to her, but it was not that kind of attraction. And then only to find out a couple of years later, that's your actual sister. Right. And thank God for that, because it would have been a really bad discovery later on. But thank God for but I guess everything works in mysterious ways, because that's exactly what it is. The chemistry, the energy was not the opposite gender. It was like really blood. And that's in itself, it's something to think about, really, because family is drawn to each other. It's feel that we see someone. It's like I don't know how far they are in your family. When they're blood, right? And but I wanted to go back to the adoption piece, right? There was, you mentioned something in the 60s and the 70s. It was almost a bad thing. Like, my God, you're adopted. Like, you got no parents, blah, blah. It was like almost like a taboo thing. And people were like, not looking at it like, it's a common thing. It was like, oh my God, what happened to you? As opposed to supporting. But kids are brutal no matter what. Then and now, they still are. Just a different type of bullying type or attitude. But I don't think it ever changes, because every generation is going to have their own spin. But the adoption piece was not a common thing. Today, people adopt all the time. There are policies, there's rules, blah, blah, blah. And it's very common. So people are very comfortable with the idea, and it's okay. One thing that you mentioned was that you always known. And so your adoptive mother knew, and she told you. So the good news is you didn't discover that later on. So you were
Exactly.
actually, and for our audiences, I mean, she is someone who took you in, who
Mhm.
raised you as her own, loved you, gave you the love, did everything for you. At least from what I hear right now, I'm assuming
Mhm.
that's all there. And
Right.
so for that's there's biological and there is actual the people that do the work. And we see that in
Mhm.
society all the time. You have a lot of
Right.
biological parents, but they're not really active parents.
Right.
You have some real parents that do the work, with their, and they may not be the biological parents, and that's pretty common even these days. So this part of the story, I think it's understandable, right? It's all, it's difficult to hear because it is not simple, and especially if someone is watching and listening, they don't have anything to relate to in this. They might like, well, okay, well, I've seen those, types of stories, right? But looking at it from your end, living that life, having to deal with all the nonsense in school and growing that way, and always wondering if you had a family, where's this family? If you have brothers, this is you could have, for all we know, you could have nobody, and
Right.
they may have been gone, whatever the case may be. But luckily, you were able to do it. And it's amazing that, by the way, I was laughing. You said the phone book because today's generation may not know what a phone book's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What
there,
is a
there,
phone book?
yeah, there's no such thing as that. Like,
Yeah,
you just
it's a
Google.
phone book.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
phone book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those things are like humongous. You watch a couple of
Right.
movies in the 90s, you know what I'm talking about, right? but it's amazing. Like, you got to flip through these things, and
Yeah.
got all these names, and but
Yellow pages.
the odds of that happening too, right? I
Right.
mean, think about it.
Right.
You could have,
Well,
it could have just a goose chase, right?
there's more to that. There's more to that piece.
So let's talk about that.
All right. Well, and one of the things I've always struggled with uh, is the question, because you mentioned that about the biological part. Are we who we are? And I'll get more into this down the road, but are we who we are based on the two factors of life? There are two factors that contribute to who we are. There's the nature part of who we are, and then there's the nurture part.
Yeah.
And are we who we are based on nature? Just who we are, our family, our DNA, or is it because of the nurture, what is instilled or taught into us? And so I've always been fascinated with that. And when you are adopted or when you are a foster child, both of those aspects are stronger in your life and fighting each other stronger. Because when you're adopted or a foster child, you have your nature because you have your biological family, you have the DNA. I remember one time after I met my biological family, I walked into a room one day and my mom said that I scared her to death because she thought I was my father. She said, "You
Oh
look
my
just
God.
like your father." She said, "You tall, just like your dad. You got his height. You look just like him." And I happened to, at the time, I had on a white hat. And she said, "Your dad loved wearing white hats." Well, that's nature. But that nurture part of you is how you enter a room, the things that you're taught. So fast forward to, I met my family. I stood there that night and I talked to my brother and talked to my sister. I went to my other brother's job. I found out that my family makeup was what I call the Brady Bunch. There's six of us, six children, three boys. Just like if you're old enough, we talk about the phone
Yeah.
book. Most people probably know who? The Brady Bunch. You talking
Uh,
about Tom Brady? Not Tom Brady. I'm talking about Marsha.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, well, there were three boys and three girls in the Brady Bunch, and they were all, I guess you can call them stair step, where
I
it
know
was
this.
they were just a year apart or
Yeah.
so apart, and it was boy, girl, boy, girl. Well, my family was the exact same way. My oldest sister, it was the brother, then the sister, then the brother, then the sister, then the brother. And I was Bobby Brady, the youngest of the six.
Wow.
And so I had two brothers and three sisters, Brady Bunch. So I'm talking to my brothers, and I've talked to my brother that was closest to me in age. And we just talked. When I first met him, I remember going to his job. He worked at the mall. And I stood at the mall we talked for 3 hours, just getting to know one. And it was amazing seeing someone and talking to someone. It was like I'm looking in a mirror. Like, this guy is me. I'm taller, but he's me. He looks like me. He has the same laugh. We have the same sense of humor. We like the same TV shows. And so if you can imagine me growing up for the first 18, 19 years of my life alone, I was an only child. It was just my mom and I. Now I'm thrown into a situation when I have 3 sisters and I have 2 brothers to bond with. And we played ball together. We talked together. We stayed together 24. I mean, and it was a totally different world for me. Well, I also noticed that connection between my siblings and I wasn't really feeling it with my mom. I respected the fact that this was my mother, but it really was, And keep in mind, and I said this then, and I'll say it today, and I stress this wholeheartedly, that there was never, has never been, and isn't today, an ounce, not 1 ounce of anger or resentment against my mom for giving me away. I just never felt it. Because I always felt as though, number one, you didn't have to give me away. You could have just killed me, threw me in a dumpster, or you could have done anything, left me somewhere. You love me enough to give me away. And I appreciated that. The other part of it was that uh, I was so focused on my life at that point of the nurture, what I learned being with this woman, how to love people, how to care, how to articulate, how to just be who I was. I didn't have a male role model growing up. And so I would turn on the television to find a male role model. Who do I pattern myself after? Who do I pattern my intelligence level? Who do I try to speak to try to get a point? And the only person that I saw on a regular basis that I could relate to was a basketball player by the name of Julius Erving, Dr. J. And so I remember going to the 76er game, and after the game, I didn't have money to get inside of the arena, so I would go around the back of the arena and wait until after the game until Dr. J would leave, and I would be there and I would walk with him to the car and get his autograph and shake his hand, and I would just observe his mannerisms and how he treated people, and that's who I patterned myself after. And so I never had that male role model other than uncles. But I remember being at a funeral one night with my mom, and I pulled her to the side and I said, listen, we need to talk. I said, I know that you feel that there's nothing between us, and you think that there's nothing between us because I have resentment against you for giving me away. And she sort of said, I thought maybe you felt, and I told her, I said, no, I want you to understand something. I grew up she felt like that because she could see how I was bonding and all of my attention was on my brothers. I said, you have to remember something. I grew up without brothers. Mm-hmm. So now that I have them, there's a connection. But that part of my heart that is designed to go toward a mother is already gone to her. Mm-hmm. I said, so, there's respect there. There is a type of love there because you're my mother, but it's not that mother type love. So from that moment on, we sort of coexisted, with each other. She would tell people I was her son, but yet it just wasn't that really, clicking, so to speak. And so, and that's how it stayed for years and years. And so I remember we had our first family reunion. And again, I'm thinking always, all right, who am I? Nature or nurture? And everything's been nurture because I don't know anything about my nature. One of the struggles with being adopted is when you're adopted and you go into the doctor's office and he says, well, do you have a family history of diabetes or heart trouble? And I'm saying, I don't know. Right. So I remember we had our first family reunion on my biological family, and I went and I took my daughter with me, and they pulled out this giant table with a family tree on it. And there was a guy there who said he was going to make a presentation. I'm like, for what? Well, when they pulled the table out, when they looked at the table and when they pulled the table out, my daughter began to look at it and she said, Dad, no one's going to believe this. No one's going to believe this. And I'm saying, okay, wow, it's interesting because when I looked at the family tree, I saw my name. I saw my 5 siblings' name and my mom. And here's one that'll rock your audience. My mom and her 21 siblings.
Oh,
Yeah, 21 of them. And I saw her dad, my grandfather, who had the same birthday that I had. And I'm saying, okay, so no one's going to believe my granddad and I had the same birthday or close to whatever. She said, no, Dad, look at this. None of my friends are going to believe this. Well, that's when I saw on the family tree that my biological grandmother, when my mother was born, when my mother was conceived, my grandfather was 63. He had 22 children by 4 different wives. Well, when you do the math, my grandparents were born in the 1800s, late 1800s, and my grandmother was Gola Ross, and Gola Ross's dad was Henry Ross. Henry Ross's brother, and all of this is on the family tree. Henry Ross's brother was Benjamin Ross. Benjamin Ross's daughter, who was my grandmother's first cousin, was Araminta Ross. So Araminta Ross and my grandmother were first cousins. So I'm first cousins twice removed from Araminta Ross. Araminta Ross then got married. Well, she changed her name to honor her mother to Harriet. So my grandmother was first cousins with Harriet Ross. Harriet Ross then married John Tubman. So my grandmother was first cousins with Harriet Tubman. And when I saw that I am, I guess, third cousins, or the technical term is first cousins twice removed from Harriet Tubman, the historian was there because they were erecting the only standalone statue of Harriet in Pittsburgh, which is where the family really was from and grew from. And I started talking to him, and he said, yeah, that's your name right there. Your first cousins twice removed. And he started talking about some of the character traits of Harriet. And he said, what you do when you're part of the family like that is you look for character traits in the family that are in your life. Now I've just shifted from the nurture to trying to figure out where's my nature, what is in my nature. And he said things sort of like Harriet, she hated being late. She just had this thing about being tardy. She just had to be on time. And I said, that's me. I can't, I just, but he said something that really triggered something in my nature. He said there was a question once about whether or not she carried a gun. And he said, yes, Harriet carried a big gun. He said, but she didn't carry a gun for the sake of defending herself against the opposition going forward. She carried a gun because the guys that the Raw side of the family were all short, 5 foot. And he said Harriet was very short. She was a little 5 foot stump of a woman. But the guys she would often lead to freedom were 6'2", 6'3", 300-pound men. And they would often get tired and say, well, you know what? I'm not going another step. I'm through. I'm not going. Harriet would then pull the gun out and say, wait a minute. Oh, yes, you are. You didn't come this far to die now. Move it. And I said, you know what? That's nature, because I've got something in me that when I come around people that say, I quit, I'm not going any further, there's something in me that just jumps up and say, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, you are. You're going to keep going. You know, life has thrown you blow after blow. And if it didn't take you out in 2018, if it didn't take you out in 2019, if the pandemic didn't take you out, then you're going to survive what you're going through in 2022, and you're going to make it to 2023. That's just who I am. And so now I've got this inspiration that now I have some sense of direction in my life because I'm related to Harriet Tubman. So
that's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, what was funny was that when I spoke with my siblings and other family members that were there, to them it wasn't. They were like, "Oh yeah, we've always."
Well, they took it for granted. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, we've always known that." And for me, it was, "Oh man, this is life changing." So what may be non-important to you is critical to someone else. Yeah. And so went through life. I'm going through the struggle. Now I'm entering this other phase. Now I'm in again. Stop me whenever. Now I enter this phase to which my driver's license and everything says David Alston, but yet my original name was Edward. And I'm wondering, who am I? Because my adopted family is the Brights, Bright, Bright, but yet I'm an Alston. Now I enter this struggle because whenever I am with the Alston family, I'm adopted. So I'm thinking I'm not really an Alston. Then when I go to the biological family, to their functions, although I know I'm a Bright, but my name is Alston. I'm not really, I didn't grow up with you all. I'm not really a Bright. And I'm struggling. When I'm with my adopted mom, and she'll say, well, have you talked to your mom? And I will say, I guess, yeah. I mean, I never want to talk to her about my other mom. When I'm with my biological mom and she said, how's Miss Alston doing? I don't want to talk. I don't want to. And so I find myself in the middle, and I'm sure many adopted people, children, adults, and foster children, who do I owe my allegiance to? Is it the mother that pushed me into life or the mother that pushed me through life? And I'm torn between two mothers. And it was just a difficult stage of my life. Although I had two names, I had no identity. Because I didn't know, is it the nature of the Bright or is it the nurture of the Alston?
So let me just get in here because, it is a very powerful question. And especially for folks that may have, experienced a similar, upbringing, right? Because at the first, and there are cases all over, about all over the world. This is a reality for a lot of folks, and we don't know the circumstances of our lives. Today is one thing. We don't know what happens to our lives in the future, and maybe we have a situation where we can even have upsprings and have this similar situation. And no one can determine that I got this. Life is full of surprises and things happen. In the case you mentioned, nurture versus nature, and I love that because in essence you have both, right? I mean, you were taught by your nurturing, mom and her side, right? And that's what you knew for the first 19 years of your life. Then you discovered your background and your DNA and your traits, and you even find yourself going back to some historical stuff, right? And you find yourself into that position. But it is a difficult task to actually kind of, like, to your point, allegiance to this here or to the other, right? And it's a tough place.
Let me interject this, and then you can finish that point to show you how strong the nature was pulling on me as opposed to the nurture. Because to this point in life, everything I'm doing is nurture. Right. Everything about me. But then I've always had this thing where I can eat peanut butter. Now, give me some peanut butter and a cracker. I can eat peanut butter. I can eat jelly. Jelly on a croissant is my favorite. I never could fathom how a human being could eat peanut butter and jelly. How can you eat peanut butter and jelly sandwich? That is the most. I can't do that. I think it's just disgusting. Until one day I'm at my biological mom's house, and she was talking about working in the school system with kids. Ironically, same job that I was doing for 20 years. And she said that the kids came into the school, and one of the kids came in with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I said, yuck, how can anybody eat peanut butter and jelly? That's nature. You mean I got that from her without even knowing that I got it from her.
Amazing.
So,
well, I mean, it's funny because you said you can eat the peanut, you can eat the jelly, but you just can't have both.
Can't have both. And I couldn't figure out why I thought I was the only kid in America that didn't like peanut butter and jelly until I talked to my mom, who said she didn't like it.
Oh, you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't like to mix those things.
Right.
Or other things. They just like everything with that taste.
It's just amazing that I got that from her. So,
DNA, right? It's powerful stuff. There's, we are who we are by default, and there is environment that we are exposed to that can teach us everything, whether it's religion, culture, behavior, all these things, right? Your environment can drive how you are. good or
Right.
bad sometimes, right? I mean,
Right.
and it's not necessarily something we cannot control. Sometimes you're just exposed to things enough
Right.
that it drives you a certain way, and then you
Right.
can make the change. It's always up to us to make that change, but
Right.
sometimes it's more difficult because you're not aligned to. So in this case, you have your personal DNA that is coming up, and
Mm-hmm.
now that you have more connection with your background and your
Mm-hmm.
family, now you're really you're seeing that you're like, oh, I do that. I'm like that. This is me. Now you can see that, on the flip side, you have the things that were taught to you by your adoptive mother and, the things that, you grew up with and the things that you've grown to like and not like and dislike and things to do, how to eat and so on. There's so many things that we pick up from our background and families, right?
Right.
But that was the family. And now you're just kind of like trying to balance the two. And,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a tough place to be. I mean, it is
Yeah.
difficult. Not it's like you have a very problem with identity, and it doesn't make it easier when you have literally two names. Which one I'm. You have the name
Right.
that everybody knows. I mean, in essence, you are all of those. You are both. At least that's how I see it. You are Edward. You are David. You're Alston and you're Bright. Although it's the name that was given to you, right? It's really the character that you are who makes you. Those names
Right.
are something, it's attributes, right? They're given to us, and we all have names we don't pick. Normally somebody
Right.
picks them for us as our parents, right? You can change your name, but the idea is that's your identity. It's not just one, it's
Right.
both. And sometimes you find yourself, a lot of people get into that pickle, like, well, who am I? Well, you are all of this stuff because that's
Right.
making your character. I mean, I have a show with a psychiatrist, world renowned psychiatrist, and this thing about identity is powerful because people sometimes get lost about it, but it's really who you are. You determine that based on whatever discovery you have. In this case, you found who you were in terms of
Mm-hmm.
heritage. You are still who you were in terms of, nurture. And now it's really just 1+1. You just both, at least,
Right. Right.
so now when you get to that point, how do you manage that? That's the question, because that's the hard part, I think.
Well, it's sort of like it's a conflict because the question is, what do you do when when your nurture comes against your nature? When you discover this is my nature, but I've been taught by nurture that this shouldn't be my nature, but it is who I am. You talk about the names. What's ironic is when she adopted me, she gave me the name David, but as a middle name, guess what name she gave me?
Edward.
Edward. So now I have both names, but yet they're two different names in every aspect. And I absolutely hated the name Edward. Wow. If you remember, when I first met them, the first thing I said to them was, my name's not Edward, my name's David. I didn't want to be associated with that because of the stigma that Edward meant that I was adopted. And so I went through, again, I'm going through life and I'm connected with both families. I'm trying to separate the two. Imagine getting to this modern day where we are now with social media, and I have to post on social media about a cousin on my adopted family side. Happy birthday, cuz, what's going on, cuz? And yet to have my biological family looking, who is that? Is that your cousin? Oh, well, wait a minute, that's a cousin on this side, trying to separate. So it's a struggle. And the reason why I wanted to bring everything out, because I think sometimes we overlook some of the struggles that children have being adopted or being foster parents, that they are really pulled, like I said earlier, between two mothers, between two worlds, two different worlds. The Bright family and the Alston family were two totally different types of people. And, but yet they were alike as far as values. They were alike. Go ahead. You were going to ask?
No. I'm listening to you, and when I think about it, right, I cannot literally put myself in those shoes, but I just understand that the fact is, I would go crazy as well. I mean, I would not know what to do because that is a very difficult place to be because am I here? Am I there? That's why I said, you are both. In essence, you are, because you discovered that you are, but now it's a matter of making your own, mixture, almost taking the both sides and making your own version that is applicable to you, that actually makes sense for you. And that could be where you can be neither or. Literally, you just become
right. And that's where I found myself, because I always felt like when I grew up in Philadelphia, I always felt like I didn't fit. I didn't belong. I remember, I don't know whether to say this or not, because if anyone sees it, my friends see this, they'll totally, I've already started. I might as well say it. I was sitting at work one day, and one of my coworkers walked up behind me, and she said, "Mr. Alston, you're not black." And I said, "Well, as far as I can tell, And she said she was actually taking a cultural course, and she learned in the cultural class that African American men, their hair pattern is circular, and mine wasn't circular. And she said, "So you're not 100% black because your hair pattern isn't circular. It's sort of." And I said, "Okay." So I called my biological mom and said, "Look, who am I?" And that's when she began to tell me, "Well, you know the history of your grandmother on my side." She said, "On your dad's side, your dad's father was a Lumbee Indian. She said, on my father's side, his grandmother was white." She said, "So you have white, Indian, black." I said, "Oh," I said, "especially," now this is the part where I don't think I should tell it, but I'm out here on a limb now. I told her, I said, "Well, the white part explains why I don't like fried chicken, I don't like watermelon, and I listen to Barry Manilow." And so she said, she said, "Whatever you do, don't tell."
Well, again, now we're talking about the nature, right? You can't do anything about your heritage. It is what it is.
Right.
I mean,
and that part, yeah. The actual, that's strange, because you talk about that's the nature part because of who my relatives were, but it was actually the nurture part, because my first job, I worked in a men's clothing store in Philadelphia called George Jacobs, and they were for big and tall men, and a lot of the professional athletes shop there. And because it was such a high-end store, not too many people came in to shop there. So we'd stand around, and I worked with 4 old Jewish guys. And so what we would do, they would have the radio on all day with no customers, and we'd just stand around listening to Sinatra and Manilow all day. That's where I picked that up from. So that was nurture from an entirely different source. So I fell in love.
Well, but again, that's good. That's true for everybody, right? We all,
right.
You're accustomed to. Again, I can tell you. I mean, I was born in Morocco, in Africa, and I came 30 years ago. But you adapt to the culture, you adapt to your, everything, right, to your surroundings. You become different, no matter what. It becomes part of you, and right, so you accept some of it. Doesn't change who you are. Doesn't change your background. Right. I mean, like, I'm still, like, my kids may be different because they're born and raised here, but for me, I'm still attached to 2 continents and 2 cultures and 2 religions, and you name it. I'm all between, right? But you try to keep your identity where you can fit the best, right? And yes, when I'm the Moroccans, I'm Moroccan. When I'm the Americans, I'm American. And so you try to be like where you can fit, and you have some traits that come from both sides. And then we joke about it. We talked about the soccer team earlier, right? But when a team plays together, like let's say Morocco plays USA, and both actually made it. Now that's going to be a pickup for me. Like, who do I cheer for? Am I going to cheer for the US? Or am I going to cheer for Morocco? But I'm gonna just have 2 flags, So
that's my point. That's my point, because I always felt like I didn't fit, because I always have this compassion for people. In high school, when I played basketball, I was devastated when we lost the game. Not because we lost the game, but I would look at my coach and I would say, "Wow, he's got to go home and tell his wife, we lost." And I felt sorry for him. And so having compassion for people, now I find myself in a situation where I'm not torn just between which one to love more or to love, period. I don't want to hurt either one. And so that's why I find myself not talking about either one. That's not the best part. Let me fast forward to the best part of the story. Because I know your viewers are probably saying, "Okay, yeah.
No, this is all pretty good stuff, man."
I'm going through life, and it's the nature versus nurture, but yet I had one dilemma. I said, you know what? I really don't want to um, stay here in the United States without the ability to travel because I could not travel because I couldn't obtain a passport. I couldn't obtain a passport, which means I couldn't go on a cruise. I can't go to Mexico. I can't go to Paris. I can't go. The reason I couldn't obtain a passport because there was no birth certificate ever created with my name on it. We mentioned earlier about the phone book.
Yeah.
Well, there's something else that was different back in the 70s. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have Google. You didn't have the ability to do the things that you do. So when it came time for me to get my driver's license, which I have a driver's license with David Alston on it, we got school records, a diploma, everything, but no birth certificate ever existed with David Alston on it. I got my driver's license because during that time, the only thing you needed to do to obtain a license was you needed a social security card, which I had one of those with my name on it, and a baptismal certificate from church, which the church wrote out a baptismal certificate that David Alston was baptized September 9th, whenever. I take this baptismal certificate and the social security card. That's my two forms of ID. And I get a driver's license, but yet no birth certificate. So I keep trying to get a passport, and they're saying we need a birth certificate. Meanwhile, I go to the Register of Deeds in Pennsylvania, and I obtain a birth certificate that says Edward Bright on it, but there's nothing attached to it because
he didn't exist.
He doesn't exist.
Wow.
So David Alston exists, but doesn't have a birth certificate. So I'm just, and so years and years of trying to figure this thing out. I actually went to an attorney, and the attorney says to me, Mr. Alston, you have a problem. The problem you have is that you are pumping money from a job into a social security account that you won't ever be able to prove is you. Because you don't have a birth certificate. Oh my God. He said, and the other problem is we can't do a name change because how are you going to change your name from David Alston to David Alston? You can't even prove that you are David Alston to begin with. So I contact the local senator. Maybe you can help me. He said, man, I can't help you, but I can tell you, you have a major league problem on your hands. He said, I've never heard of this, and I don't know how you're going to resolve this, but you need it resolved. He said, because if you pass away, your family won't even be able to collect because you don't exist. So the one thing they said that would help me is if I had my adoption papers. So I go to my mom and say, look, I know you adopted me at 7 months. Can I get my adoption papers? Yeah, I'll give them to you. And this went on that we went back and forth for years. She kept telling me they're in the closet, in a drawer, in a box in the closet where I keep all my papers. I'll give it to you. She never gave me my adoption papers. And then in 2011, at Thanksgiving, a day before Thanksgiving, she passes away. Oh. And I never got the adoption papers. So again, I'm at ground zero, not being able to do anything with my name or anything. So I talked to my biological mom about it, and she said, I don't know what to tell you, maybe you need to talk to someone. I go to Philadelphia. She goes with me downtown to the Register of Deeds. They talk to her, and the only thing they were able to give her is a copy of my birth certificate that says Edward Bright, which is useless. It's just like a blank piece of paper because
there's no life on it.
Yeah. Right.
It's like just born now. That's like today's birthday.
Yeah. Right. So about 5 years ago, 3 years ago, not 5 years ago, let me get it right. About 5 years ago, we're talking and she's on the phone with me. And again, keep in mind, although my adopted mom had died, my biological mom and I, we really never really had that real bonding. But that was my mom, but we never. So she calls me one day and we're talking, and she says to me, how are you making out with getting your birth certificate and passport? And I says to her, I'm getting nowhere, and it's just killing me it's just emotionally so frustrating. I don't know what to do. I said, the only thing that I can get to help me is my adoption papers. And she's gone. And she gets real quiet. And I'm saying, why are you quiet? And she's not saying anything. And I said, hello? Yeah, I'm here. I said, why are you so quiet? And she gives a big sigh and she says, well, you weren't adopted.
What?
And so, excuse me, what? you know? And she said that just days earlier at something, she was somewhere with one of her nephews, and the nephew asked her about me and said, Uncle David, is that the one you gave up for adoption? She said, and I screamed at him, he wasn't adopted. And I'm like, what do you mean I wasn't adopted? And that's when she began to share with me the true story of what happened, how she was financially going through a rough time. She had a friend who had a friend who had a sister that was in the church that said, I can help you. The woman comes to the house, talks to my mom, tells my mom, I could help you, the woman being my adopted mom, and says, let me long-term babysit your child for the baby and the sister. That way you can get on your feet financially. You don't have to worry about feeding or clothing the child or anything. I'll take care of the child until you get on your feet. Once you get on your feet, come and get your baby back. My mom says, no, just take the baby. I can handle my sister, who was about 15 months older than I am. So she takes me home to long-term babysit me. My mom gets on her feet financially, and she comes to get me. And when she comes to get me, she knocks on the door. No one comes to the door. The neighbor comes out and says, ma'am, who you looking for? And she said, I'm looking for Miss Alston. The neighbor said, Miss Alston, you mean the lady that got that little baby? And she says, yes. The neighbor says, man, she left here. She moved out as soon as she got that baby. So I said, wait a minute. Do you know what you're telling me that happened to me?
That's kidnapping.
Abduction. She said that abduction.
Yeah.
She said she went to the police, and the police told her, Miss Bright, technically, your child was abducted. Legally, there's nothing we can do about it. The reason we can't do anything legally about it is because she did not come into your house, talk to you, and when you went to the bathroom, take your child and run off with your child. You gave her the child. So we can't do anything about it.
Oh, so, wow. So you were saying, like, our audience is going to be like, bored. I think this just puts a whole different, spin on things here. I mean, the idea of the adoption piece we understood, but the fact that you throw two things at us right now. One is you're a person with literally no citizenship because you can't prove your citizenship. That's a big deal. You got, it's almost like, you live, and it is difficult because you need to claim a land, right? You need to claim some sort of ownership, where you belong. You are American as they come, but you have no documentation to submit. Now, I mean, you could literally become you, Edward, right? But then you have no linkage to that. It's like you're born now. You were not, so that's one problem. Now, not only that, you are throwing the idea that not only you were adopted, but you were literally stolen. I mean, abducted from your original mom, and your, I guess, adopted mom ran away with you and took you away. And then the law could not even protect you in this case because you were basically here, babysit my son for me, and then boom. So it was done with permission, without foul play. The intention maybe was there. We don't know. I mean, she's gone, so no one knows that story. But the fact is, that in itself, I mean, for our audiences, if you're out there listening, watching, I mean, this is something that's huge because abduction is a big topic. I mean, we hear all the stuff now. Now it never stopped. I mean, I've heard since I was a kid, my parents were like, be careful. People take kids and stuff like that. It's always been out there. It's still out there. And but the ripple effect that happens over time is this. I mean, you are grown, you are here, you are helping people, you're in society, but then you're struggling just with the basic elements of you, which is your identity. You have a social security, for one name, that you don't have a birth certificate. You can get a new social security, but this is going to be like almost starting a new life today, a new leaf.
Right.
I mean, your birthday literally is going to be whenever you get that new stuff. So that's kind of an interesting birth certificate, right? But now let's talk about that, right? In a minute. I wanted just to pause. I mean, like, so when you found out about this abduction, I mean, you probably just flipped. I mean, I would literally go crazy.
Well, she's telling me, and I've got tears coming, because what is happening on the phone is, for the first time while she's telling me this, and she's telling me that she immediately at that point, she started drinking and getting in, to try to drown, because she's thinking, I'll never see my baby again. And her sister came and got her one Sunday and said, you're going with me to church because I'm tired of you going into a hole like this. While they were at church, and this went on for years. So by this time, when the sister finally came to pull her out of this hole, I'm about 5 years old. And they go to church, and the pastor stops and says, you know what, I have an idea. And he divided up the church into groups of twos. And he said, by now, he has to be in school. So they went to every school in Philadelphia, elementary school, to find me. They came to my school where I was. I was in the classroom. They came to my school and asked the secretary if you had a student that's enrolled there. Secretary said no, because they had asked for Edward Bright.
Right.
She enrolled me, and later on, I saw the enrollment papers. It had on there that my name was Edward Bright, but going by David Alston.
Oh my God! So the school could have solved the problem.
It really wasn't that obvious to the secretary, because on the school roll, it didn't have Edward Bright. It had David Alston. But the enrollment papers had Edward Bright, but going by David Alston. So in the system, they didn't put Edward Bright, they put David Alston. So when they came and asked for Edward Bright, there was no Edward Bright, it was David Alston. And while she's telling me this, the most amazing thing is happening. Our hearts that I told you we didn't really, all of a sudden, it was just like magical. Because I'm thinking for the first time, what the pain you had to go through losing your child. And so at that moment, there was a bond between her and I. And so we kept talking. She told me that even the story, if you remember earlier when I said that my cousin was looking through the phone book, and how she called her, she said that she called me, but that wasn't the first time she had called me. She said she always knew where I was. She would not let me connect with me. I found out that my brothers played in the same playground that I was in. I just didn't know them. So she said that wasn't true she said, I never told her on the phone that night that I was running from people, and I told them, which I didn't hear the conversation. I just heard her end of it, asking, was it her? She said, I never told her that. So it was just, I'm going to get to the end because we're running out of time, because I could talk all night. Let me get to the end.
No, this is powerful, man.
The real kicker for me, that Christmas of 2020, my biological mom really took sick. She passed away the day before Christmas, 2 days before Christmas of 2020. And I went to the hospital. Thank you. I went to the hospital to see her in Philly or Jersey. And I go in the hospital room, and my mom she had a high pain tolerance. She never complained about pain at all. I mean, needles in the eye, all that. She just never complained. And we're sitting there, and she telling me, she said, I've never felt this much pain in my life. I just don't. I said, don't talk like that. And for the first time in my life, my mom says to me that she loves me. And I'm in the room like, oh, wow, this is, what's happening here? And so I get up, and before I left the hospital room and I saw my mom for the last time, I got to the door, I turned around and I told her, because I live in North Carolina, so I'm getting ready to drive from Philly to Carolina, and I said to her, now I want you to remember, if you can remember the first night that I saw them, what I said to my sister is critical. When my sister came over and said, "Hey, Eddie," and hold up. So I'm looking at my mom and I tell her, I said, well, I got to head on back. I said, I love you too. And hopefully I get to come back up here and see you real soon. If they take you, you get out of here and go somewhere, I'll come see you, whatever. And she said, okay. She said, I love you, David. Drive carefully. And I turned at the door and I walked back over to her. And these were the last words that I ever said to my mother, my biological mother. I looked her in the eyes and I said to her, my name is Edward.
Wow.
And the type of peace that, and so she passed away on Christmas, and I was determined to keep fighting for my identity, to do what I needed to do for her, because she really wanted me to settle things. And it really didn't matter what name, she just wanted me to settle it. So I called Philadelphia, registered these, and to just talk to someone about my situation. And the automatic system said, look, you got a 3-hour and 20-minute wait. No, I'm not waiting 3 hours. And about a month later, I'm riding along, and it's like I can just feel this sense to call back up there. And I called up there, and it said, you got a 3-minute wait. I said, I can do that. And I'll never forget, I spoke to an older lady on the phone about my situation. And she says to me, you know what, I'm going to do something that if they found out, I might lose my job. She said, but years ago, she said, I can't do a name change for you. She said, but years ago, people spell people's names incorrectly on their birth certificate. They would spell Jackie, Jacy, and we'd have to correct it. She said, Mr. Alston, I am in the system right now, and I'm changing your birth certificate from Edward Bright to David Alston to say that they spelled your name wrong. And you will have a new birth certificate in 3 days. In 3 days, I looked in the mail, and I had a brand new birth certificate with David Edward Alston on it. I immediately got my passport, and a couple months ago went on my first cruise. And I remember, it was almost like I was fighting the tears back, standing there on the deck of the cruise ship while I held the glass up in the air and said, you know what, Mom, this one's for you. And, and I tell people, no matter what you go through, you just have to keep fighting. I'm from Philly, and there's an old saying, you're from Philly, we fight. I remember telling my daughter one time, I said, we hear lines in a movie, but sometimes movie lines are powerful. And one of the most powerful movie lines I've ever heard comes from a movie about Philadelphia named Rocky Balboa. And Rocky said, life will knock you down and keep you on your knees if you let it. But it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep coming back. And for me, ever since I was 7 months old and found out I was adopted, life kept hitting at me and hitting at me. And just when I thought it was over, when I thought, I can't take any more pain, I can't do it anymore. When my mom told me that, and I immediately called some of my family members to say, wait a minute, this can't be true. And to hear family members saying, oh, I believe it's true because she told us she found you on the doorstep of the church. To hear different ones saying, wait a minute. So the conversation she had, it all makes sense now. When I heard her telling her sister, oh, I wasn't giving him back. Things like, to hear all of that, there are constant blows coming, but you got to be bigger than the blows that hit you. You're going to get hit. It's just a part of life. You're going to have trouble in life, whether it's back trouble or family trouble. In my case, nurture trouble. But you got to keep fighting back. And I spent all of my life just, living off of nurture versus nature. And now at my age, I'm 57 years old. And to hear my sisters tell me, you know what, Mommy's been gone for 2 years, but you talk just like her. You sound like her. Your wisdom is just like her. That means I'm shifting now to my nature, because the nurture part of me got me where I am. If you line my brothers and my sisters up in the room, you may think I was the oldest instead of the youngest because of the nurture that I received. But I had to take that nurture and utilize it to help others, because we're here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And so I started that podcast called The Underground Subway in honor of Harriet, who had the Underground Railroad. But I said, we're not living in a time where we got an Underground Railroad. We're modernized. So we got the subway. And so only thing we talk about is how can we live a better life? How can we live a life of freedom? What does freedom mean? Being able to function without restraints. And I know they said Harriet said it. We found out that maybe she didn't, but there's a quote that said, I could have freed a lot more slaves if only they knew. And I always quote that because to me, it says that in life, so many times we have things holding us back and we don't even realize that we have chains holding us back. It's become a norm for us. And when it becomes a norm for you, you don't try to become liberated. You just think this is the way it is. And so I try to reveal to people, listen, whether it's mental health, whether it's finances, whether it's your physical health, all of us have things, whether it's our past, whether it's relationships, whatever it is, all of us have some things in our life that is always trying to hold us back. We need to reveal what it is. And it is up to you. It's up to you to break the chains. Not me. I can't do it. Because I say this sometimes on my cell phone. Going back, we used to have, before we had the GPS system on the phone, we had the little Garmin box. And before that, we did MapQuest. You remember MapQuest?
You got to print them out.
Got to print it out. But what it shows you is it shows you where you are, and you have to determine, you have to put into the system where you want to go. The GPS is not going to tell you where to, it may recommend some places for you to go based on your past history, but you have to tell life, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. The GPS podcasts such as this, shows such as this, will show you this is how you do it. This is the direction. It will tell you this is how long it's going to take to get there. You're going to encounter certain things along the way. One of the things I love about a GPS, it will tell you have two options. You can go the fast way or the longer way. However, the faster way will take you to tolls. And through tolls, you're going to have to pay to get there quicker. If you don't want to pay the price, it's going to take you a longer time to get there. But after all of that, after it tells you how long it's going to take you to get there, after it shows you the road, some difficult detours and everything, you have to hit that go button. And when you hit the go button, it will tell you now starting route to your destination. And so I went through something that maybe it was nothing to someone else. But for me, I've encountered a lot of tears, a lot of heart pain, a lot of confusion in my life. But as the young people say, at the end of the day, I hit back. I took the blows, and I'm better for it. And I told my mother before she died, I said, all that happened to me, I said, first of all, I only have one question. Why did you wait so late to tell me? And she said, because I didn't want you to have bad feelings toward her. And I said, listen, what you told me didn't change how I felt about her one bit. But it did change how I feel about you. Yeah. I said, that's what matters. I said, because there's a part of my nature and a part of my nurture that taught me to love everybody, to love without any conditions. And it's a part of my nature and a part of my nurture that taught me how to fight through every adversity. And someone may be watching, you got to fight. You can't give up. You can't, not now. Not now. You have come through too much adversity, too much pain to stop now. Keep going. You got a destiny. You got to do it. You got to keep going, not just for you, but for the next generation. You got to be that one that someone looks at the tree, the family tree, and see your name. And they ought to say, wait a minute, I'm related to her. I'm related to him. He's a survivor. I tell people all the time, ABC, whoever it was, they wasted millions of dollars spending on TV cameras and crews and everything, taping a show called Survivor. All they had to do was call me, and I would show them the survivor. And all they got to do is call you. You're the survivor, and you can do it. And I know I talk a lot, but I'm really passionate about survival through everything that we go through, and we have a purpose, and we don't have long. I mean, life is short, man. I've been going through a time recently when it seems like all of my childhood friends are just dropping, just dropping, just dropping. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to turn it back over to, I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, she said, you know what, Mr. Alston, I'm going to schedule you for an appointment. She said, I have a concern because of your family history. I have a concern about your heart. My dad was so popular. They did a write-up on him in the New York Times because my dad had seven heart incidents, minor attacks. The seventh attack was a major attack that took him out. And they couldn't understand how a man could have so many heart incidents like that and survive. The seventh one took him out at age 37. My brother died at age 50 from a massive heart attack. My sister had 2 transplants and passed away and died at 42 years old. The doctor said to me a few months ago, she said, I'm concerned because of your family history. We need to do the scope. We need to go into your heart and see, can we find something before it's too late? And so we scheduled that, ironically, the day after I got back from the cruise. So I get into the doctor's office and I'm sitting there with him, and he comes into the room. He takes my EKG. He looks at my paperwork and he says, Mr. Alston, I got one major question for you going forward. I said, yes, sir. He said, why are you wasting my time? I said, what do you mean? He said, your dad had 7. What did your dad basically do after each one? I said, he would leave the hospital and go home and get drunk. He said, and that's what did it. He said, do you drink? No. He said, we can check that off. He said, what happened to your brother? I said, well, he wasn't very active at all. He didn't exercise, and he did a little drugs here and there. He said, boom, we can mark that off. He said, what happened with your sister? I said, well, my sister had a baby, and after the baby, he said that's called post something, dealing with maternal, having the baby, having the baby kicked her heart out of rhythm, which ruined her heart. He said, we don't have to worry about you having a baby. He said, none of those apply to you. He said, looking at your EKG, he said, what do you do? I said, well, I do spin class where I'm on that exercise bike. He said, well, why would I even give you a stress test? He said, every time you're on that bike, you're having a stress test. I said, yeah. He said, so why are you wasting my time? Go home and enjoy your life. And wow, how many of us are worrying? I'm sorry. I said one more thing. This is it right here. Before my mom died, my adopted mom died, she told me, she said, baby, you said something to me at 8 years old that changed my life. I said, what could I have said at 8? She said, you came in the room one day and you said to me, Mommy, why do we worry about things we can't control? She said, that just blew me away that at 8 you said that. And that's been my motto. Many of us worry about things we can't control. Why? Just control the things that you can control. Don't worry about what you can control. Fix it. And what you can't control, let it just work towards your favor. Let it just work in your behalf, because everything eventually comes together to work in your behalf. Who knew when I was adopted that I would be a podcast? I'm a podcaster. Who knew that I'd be, right now I'm working for the University of North Carolina in their Division of Oncology, dealing with cancer patients. Who knew that I would do that at 7 months old when I was abducted? And I've gone from abduction to pure happiness right now. And so I would tell anybody, I take no excuses for what you go through. You can cry, you can bleed, you can lay there for a few minutes, but you're going to have to get up and get back in the fight. We don't throw in towels. We're from Philly. We fight.
I think this message is for everyone in this planet. I couldn't even interject because it was just so powerful. I mean, the whole thing shifted, and I do recall when you mentioned something about you didn't have any resentment for your biological mother first. When I heard the latter part of the story, now I realize that she had all this pain herself in, with her. And just as a mother, not to be able to tell you because she's protecting you and your vision of your, adoptive mother. That is, and then luckily you didn't have a negative feel for her. You didn't attach just to her, but you did that. That was like a moment for me, it just kind of like threw me off because just hearing that story at the end where you really found out what it was and that's true love actually that she had, but she couldn't do anything about it. And I'm so happy that you found all that stuff at the end and you were able to clear the air and be who you were and finally found your identity. And even better when I heard that you were able to get your paperwork and your cruise and you did all the stuff. And then the message that you brought today to the world, literally, Philly, New York, anywhere in the world, that message is a message of hope, inspiration, and just success in life, living life. It will throw in left and right at you. You'll get storms, you get all kind of stuff. But your story, I mean, if a lot of people they get challenged with little things and they go crazy and they just lose it, right? Or they think that the world is ending. What you had to go through is not a picnic. It's years of struggle and it's tough. And people are going through things every day.
Oh yeah.
Different levels, different things. Everybody's got their own problems, right? And but really the message is that no matter what phases you're in life, you can prevail. You will prevail as long as you don't give up and you're continuously focused on the final. You have the ability to write the chapter. I love the analogy you said about the GPS. And you want a toll road, that's fine, but it's going to cost you. You want a longer road, it's going to cost you. One way or the other, you're paying something.
That's right.
One is time and effort. The other one is more money, and which
that's right. That's right.
One way that's going to cost you, but you determine which route you take: shortcut, long road, whatever. But you will get to the destination, and you will determine the destination. I think that's powerful. The fact that you mentioned something about the condition of your brother, your sister, your father, and then you had the concern, and you had a clean bill of health, and that's beautiful because of your habits, because of your practice, what you do, your daily lifestyle, and that in itself, again. By the way, you mentioned 57, dude. You look much younger. You're looking good. I mean, there's no doubt there. So that's literally a result of how you manage things, right? You don't dwell on things, you are pushing. I know before we even got on the show, we talked about why you do the job that you do, the work you do, the podcast is to bring this message to people. And you do this on a regular basis. Your podcast is out there for people to encourage people to be better and to be literally just full of energy and full of hope. And that's the thing. You have hope, you can change the world. You have hope, you can change your destiny. You have hope and believe you can do everything. Hope alone, it's one thing, but believe and really go through it. The line from Rocky's movie, it's a tradition, it's a classic, and
yes,
exactly right. I think I just shared it a couple of weeks back on one of those posts. It is, it's always a classic. It comes back every now and then, and you see it. It just gives you like that motivation. And again, coming from you, from Philly, it's even better, right? But the fact is, these are the things that sometimes we take for granted. But life is never going to be easy. And by the way, the minute you think it's gonna be easy or it's gonna ease up, that's when you're wrong. It's gonna throw some lefts and rights, you're gonna get a little bit of a sidekick, a little bit of a blindside, business, but just stay focused. You said it, you're gonna bleed, you're gonna fall, you gotta stand up and go. It's not how many times you fall, is how many times you stand. And you just gonna have to be, at the end of the day, standing to the last minute. Even with your biological mom, even before she departed. Look how long it took. And yet she left at peace. You had the peace. And that was beautiful. The fact that you were able to clear that and live after that, knowing that it was a beautiful moment. It was clear. And now she's really your mom, your love. And so you were able to get that. That in itself is a story on its own of success and getting there. But then you were able to do things. And that's the other thing. Some people, they think that I can never make this. It's going to be the end is happening. Well, you had, 15 minutes ago, you were a man with no country.
Right.
Clearly, technically, right? You had no citizenship, right? But now you have all that. Like just 15 minutes of a discussion is few years in life of your life. But the fact of the matter is, someone at that time frame, they'd be like, it's over. There's nothing for me. But you never gave up. You kept going. You kept asking. And you did all the stuff. That's the other thing. People want things to happen, but they don't do.
You have to do it. That's right.
You got to do it. You did it.
That's right.
You went through the motions, and you never lost hope, and you never gave up, but you kept the action. So you were always, you believed, you took the action, and that's really what it takes. And so the work you do is admirable. And I think, keep up the great job, man. I mean, I love what we've heard today. I think this story, this show is so powerful for many people. And I don't care what race, what location, what religion, what country, if you're listening to this one, because we go live across the nation here and across the globe. No matter what language you speak, if you can actually get to this and pick up the vibe from the show, folks, I can guarantee you there is something here, a lesson learned for life. And you can share this message across, again, the world, and you will help someone get by. You will help someone find themselves. You will help someone literally live a better life and happier life. And yes, happiness comes with prices sometimes, and you want to get through it. Obviously, we ask that we have the least possible struggle, but that's not always guaranteed. Things are going to be out there, and you don't select your life. You are given, literally, you're dealt certain things from the upbringing. You did not select to be, in this position. You discovered you were in this position as life went on. Most of us have the same circumstances. You grew up, immigration, this and that. People are born all over the world. They don't choose where they like. Everybody would love to be born somewhere where everything is perfect, right? But everybody's born somewhere, and you don't pick that. We don't pick our parents. We don't pick our society. We don't pick our religion. We are born into these things, and then we discover ourselves eventually, and then we make the difference as we go. It may be easy to some, it may be difficult, and it doesn't matter. Money, not money. I think even with money, you have struggles. Sometimes even worse. So it doesn't matter what your background is. You will have that, and the only way is to keep the hope, keep the motivation, keep the inspiration going, and believe and know that it's going to be there. The light is going to be at the end of the tunnel. Just believe that. You just have to do it, but don't give up. And that's the problem. People give up too soon, and they collapse, and they take the wrong decisions, and they make the wrong stuff, and they affect themselves. I mean, you could easily have gone, literally rogue and did a bad thing to yourself and hurt yourself, right? But you didn't. You didn't. And now look at you. I mean, you are inspiring generations. And yes, one day this podcast will probably be somewhere. I mean, I'm talking about mine. I mean, I'm talking about yours, that someone's going to look back like, oh my God, look at this stuff that's being juiced up by now I can say David Edward. So it's something that is powerful, right? And I personally want to thank you. I mean, I know we've run out over the time frame, but really this is a discussion that deserved more time, and you literally deserve that, man. I mean, I thank you for even sharing that with us, and really, it is a message for hope. It is a message for believe. It is a message for inspiration. Someone out there can really take this to the bank and apply it. Your circumstances may be what you, and by the way, for people who have gone through similar stories, and they are, adopted, abducted, foster parents, whatever the cases may be, there is an opportunity for you equally as anybody else. You will be able to do better as long as you don't choose the wrong path. Again, the GPS, you pick the wrong route, wrong time, wrong place, wrong destination. It could be a problem, but pick the right destination, know where you want to be, and you will get there. Whatever the struggles that come along, you will get there. And that is, and I think that's powerful. So not only actually your message is for people who have experienced a similar, life, but also for people that may have different circumstances, but they still add up to the same. At the end of the day, we talk about rate of suicide. Many people commit suicide because they see the end. They cannot go beyond it. And I don't want to judge anyone, but that's the way out, right? I can't do this anymore, and it is not a good feeling to hear about it, and it's skyrocketing as a problem, right? In society, we have that across the world, and but believing maybe this message can stop someone from even considering such a thing or an action, right? this message can get someone the hope that they might have, lacked, for whatever reason, they were not hearing it. So maybe this message can be the reason why someone lives a longer and more prosperous life. So we just hope from this platform and, with your help and your message here, that we can turn and help people, whatever they are, whatever they might be. So I listen, you've talked a lot, I've talked a lot, but I want to just close this with your final piece of advice to our audiences. What would that simple message be?
My message would be to just love one another, love yourself, keep a mirror in front of you to which you can evaluate yourself. When you evaluate yourself, if you don't like what you see, a mirror is not there just for you to see what's in the mirror. It's there to give you an opportunity to change what's in the mirror. And if you see yourself as depressed and suicidal, I've been there. I've laid in the bed at night with my gun on my pillow, thinking I need to just end this now because I can't take anymore. Called my daughter and said, Dad, she said, Dad, don't even think about that. If you don't want to live for yourself, live for your grandbabies. And it made me realize something, that we can't be selfish to the point where I take my own life, the impact that it will have on other people in your life that love you, because someone does love you. And you have to love yourself. Love yourself enough that when you get to that point where you feel like you can't make it, the biggest word in the English language consists of 4 letters, HELP, help. Cry for help. Seek help. There's always hope and there's always help. And I always end every podcast with this challenge, and I want to challenge everyone that's watching with this challenge, that before you go to bed tonight, find a mirror, a physical mirror, and look yourself in the eyes and ask yourself this question. Today, did I do something to work toward my destiny? Did I do something to get toward where the GPS system is taking me? Or did I just waste another day? Think about that. We don't have any time to waste. If you need help, ask for it. But you got to hit that button and start living. Start living.
That is powerful. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna ask that question. I think everybody, it is powerful. Thank you so much. I mean,
thank you.
Now, like I said, I'm gonna call you David Edward. It was a true pleasure having you, an honor, and
thank you for having me. I'm so honored and humbled to be here.
Dude, this is powerful stuff, and I enjoy it, and I know we can make a difference, and we can only do it with your message, because this is power stuff. And you didn't mention this part in earlier show about having the thoughts that you wanted to end live, and the message for your daughter also, that's all impactful. So folks, again, you watch this, listen to it a couple times, whatever you do, just do this one a couple times just so you can sink it all in. And I guarantee you, life will be a whole different spin for you. You will see yourself living much better and happier, no matter what happens, no matter what phases in life, you're going to be able to face it. So again, thank you so much for being on the show, and for just so great. And folks, thank you for being on, with us, watching and listening and taking the time. It is a longer show, but it's really worth every minute, every second of your life. And it can be the time where you can become a whole different person and a happier person, and live a happier life for how long as you live, and probably maybe even change your destiny to better things. So take it for what it's worth. And that's about it. So we're coming to the end of the show. David, Edward, thank you so much. And
folks, thank you. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. Yes. And so folks, we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new guest, and new topic. Stay tuned. Bye for now.